Guys. We've got Coach here. I'll let him go ahead and talk about Saturday at Utah State.
Well, good to see you guys. Ryan must have stole that shirt from McKinney. Yeah, got a Metallica shirt on.
Got a baby.
I actually watched that documentary on Netflix the other night. Yeah, that wasn't as good as I thought it was gonna be. Well, I know we'll play Saturday, not sure who will play, and we won't talk about who that could be and who that won't be, but hopefully we'll have a good portion, the majority of the team back. I know for sure, we might be missing a couple, but hopefully the dark days are behind us, and hopefully we're starting to see some light. It's been a very challenging last 10 days, as everybody in the country is really experiencing. It's amazing how quickly that Omicron can kind of go through a program, and we had not experienced anything like that for the last 18 months. Have had very, very few cases within the program and never had a game shut down because of us. But like everybody else, I mean, we're not immune to it. So I thought maybe Laradice was the place where COVID didn't exist, but obviously it still exists here. And so, but hopefully once we kind of get past this week, and we're still at the mercy too of the NCAA guidelines, the CDC guidelines in terms of these guys on day 5, whether they can test out of it or not. And as we are seeing, some guys test negative and some guys still continue to test positive. And so it's frustrating, but it's hopefully here by the end of this week, we'll be done with it. And then we'll know that moving forward, that it won't be because of us, the reason why games won't be played. I know that for a fact. So just got to continue to move forward. The guys that can work out, the guys that can practice, we've been doing stuff with them, just trying to make sure that we keep our conditioning and keep our, hopefully, some sense of rhythm. And it's been tough because you look at before Hawaii, we were off 10 days before we played in Hawaii. Last time we played was on December 25th, and now we're looking at about 21 days before we play again. So, I mean, it's been an interesting last month, but, nobody cares. There's no excuses. Utah State I don't think they've had a pause yet. And so those teams that have not been paused, they're definitely at a big advantage just because they have some rhythm and continuity. They have a good idea of who their team's going to be. And in our case, we're still not quite sure who we're going to be on Saturday, but we will have enough to play. And Utah State's a very dangerous team offensively. I mean, they're number 1 in the country in assists on made baskets. They play a lot of 5-out, especially with Horvath, the transfer from UMBC who came with Coach Odom. He can really shoot the ball and stretch the defense. He's a lot like Thompson in terms of how he puts a lot of pressure on you at the 5 spot. And then they have, for the most part, 4 or 5 guys on the floor that can shoot it at all times. And so they put a lot of pressure on you to try to guard the 3-point line, and they still have, the talent to where they can beat you with 2s. The one thing is, at least I'm not seeing Kada out there blocking 80 million shots like he has the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, forget how good of a player he was. Not sure why he wasn't the player of the year in the league last year, but his impact on the defensive end was just as good as I've seen in my 20 years in coaching college. And having played against a lot of good players, good shot blockers, good defensive players. I'm not sure in my time I'd played against a better defensive player who impacted on that end. But you still have Justin Bean, who he's really picked up his shooting. A guy that we didn't actually guard last year when we were at Utah State, but I think right now he's shooting almost over 50% from the 3, 60 from the field. I mean, he's playing at a really high level, and a guy that I have a lot of respect for in terms of just how hard he plays. I mean, he's a guy that doesn't take a lot of possessions off. So Coach Odom, a guy that I've known a long time, helped me get one of my first players when I was an assistant at Midland Junior College in Texas. He was an assistant at the time for Seth Greenberg at Virginia Tech, and helped me get Arturas Velika, who was a 6'9" power forward from Lithuania that ended up going with me to Weber State, led the Big Sky in rebounding for 2 straight years, and was a really good player. So always thankful for Coach Odom for that. And a really good dude, and glad he's in the league. But as I watch them offensively, I mean, they're very similar to us in how we play, and does a good job in terms of attacking coverages and a lot of, European concepts. And he's had a lot of ties to Europe. And so it's going to be a tough test regardless of who we have on the floor. But we're looking forward to playing. And that's the biggest thing now, is that, we're going to be able to play, and not sure how it's going to look early on. You see Colorado State in those first 2 games back against Air Force and San Diego State. You could tell they really didn't have their rhythm and timing. Luckily for us, I mean, we're an inside out team. We don't run very much, if at all. And when you're throwing that ball inside to Graham, and then you're dribbling down Maldo, we're not moving as much as maybe some other teams. So hopefully we can get our rhythm back sooner or later. I expect it not to be, looking like mid-season form coming out of the gate. But luckily for us, I mean, we're not going to experience any more pauses to where we can just continue to get better. And hopefully we're playing our best basketball come, February, March.
All right, guys, go ahead.
Jeff, did you guys have any serious symptoms, and did it kind of burn through everyone, or how would you describe what happened to you guys?
Well, I mean, I think like most everywhere, it's there's not, I mean, there was, a couple guys, if I got the flu, although my wife always says, I mean, regardless of what I get, is a man cold. And so I guess with men, you never know. I mean, you could have a cold, which, maybe a woman would probably be back after, she'd still have to take care of the kids and go to work, and I'd probably be out for 2 days. So, but I know our guys, for the most part, we had a couple that had, some flu-like symptoms for a couple days, but for the most part, most of these guys have just had very, very mild symptoms. Some of them didn't have no idea that they did have it. A couple others had maybe a headache, a cough for a day, but luckily, hopefully, the virus has kind of made its way towards where we can start maybe treating it as something that's not, but there's still people being impacted by it. I mean, it can still kill people, and so we still have to be cautious about that. But from what I'm seeing with our guys, I mean, it's really a cold or something that's even less.
Hey Jeff, you mentioned the 3-week break earlier. How much practice have you guys been able to get in the past week or so? And, what else have y'all done to just kind of make sure that you're locked in mentally and physically coming off the break?
Well, I mean, leading up to Boise, I mean, we practiced, and then since then it's turned into COVID Palooza. And so the guys that we do have, I mean, which hasn't been many, we've done, a lot of individual work. We've experimented with FIBA 3-on-3, especially since my 3 red shirts. I mean, they're out there running around, and so it's good for them. You forget how out of shape those guys get by just being on scout team all the time. But we haven't had, it's one of those deals where, you can't do much. I mean, we're past the days of Zooms and doing stuff like that. And we know who we are as a team, and we know what our identity is. I mean, we're not going to try to reinvent the wheel. And maybe in some ways, having this 10 day to 14 day kind of break, maybe that helps us moving forward, towards the end of the season. So you never know, but, we try to do as much as we can with the guys that we do have. Conditioning, I think the guys that have played major minutes, those guys, they're not, their stamina and their conditioning really hasn't been impacted as much as maybe some of the guys that don't play as much. So, but some of those guys that maybe haven't played as much might have to start playing a little bit more. But at the same time, really, I mean, we've just been at the mercy of the guys that we've had, and we have to adjust every day, because every day it brings something different. You just never know. So great ones adjust, and we'll continue adjusting.
Jeff, it's not ideal, but if things go smoothly from here on out and you're able to play the scheduled games you have now, I mean, how much do you think the players would look forward to playing 4 games in a week?
Well, I know they'd much rather have 4 games in a week than 4 practices in a week. So, and that's where we're at in this point of the season. I mean, we're almost to February, and all you're going to do in practice right now is get guys hurt. Although for us, being that we've been off for so long, I mean, we're going to have to play some 5-on-5 just to kind of get our rhythm and timing back. But it's, these guys, I mean, where we're at, I mean, 4 games, 8 days, and we kind of experienced maybe one of those stretches early on. I dealt with it all the time when I was at UNC in the Big Sky. I mean, it's it's not ideal, but I'd rather play games. And right now that's what we need to do is we need to play games. I mean, that's what we need to do is get as many games in as possible and let the chips fall where they may.
You talked about Utah State's Justin Bean earlier. For you guys as a defense, what is that? How big of a team collective effort is it slowing down a guy like that that's able to do so much?
Well, I mean, it's a team effort for their entire team. I mean, it's not just Justin Bean. I mean, they got a lot of different guys that can beat you in a lot of different ways, and so it's going to be a collective effort. In case of him, I mean, it's not. He's gonna make some plays, he's gonna make some shots, but the biggest thing with him is the winning plays, the winning effort plays that he makes, the second chance opportunities, the offensive rebounding. Those are the things that separate him. And so that's where you got to match his effort. And there's not a lot of guys that can do that. And hopefully, in our case, with some guys coming back that we haven't been doing much, hopefully, we don't see that and hopefully not impacting us late in the game. But, his effort and his ability to compete on every single possession at a really high level is what really makes him a good player. The fact that he's making shots now, I mean, that's just an added bonus.
From the sample size that we do have, what are your early impressions of the league from kind of the games you've checked out?
That's a good question. I've watched, I've pretty much scouted about 7 teams, who we thought were going to play, might have played. It's hard to say early on, obviously, what San Diego State did to Colorado State. But I don't think anybody thought that San Diego State wasn't going to be San Diego State. And, the thing that you have to take into account too, is last year for some of these teams, for all of us, we didn't play with fans. So when you go into Viejas, when there's nobody there, that's a lot different when you go to Viejas when there's 12,000 people there. And so, luckily for us, we played in some pretty crazy environments thus far this year. I mean, having played at Grand Canyon, Arizona, I mean, we're not going to see any place like that. Now, back in the day, the pit used to be like that. Viejas can get like that, but at least our guys have been in those environments to where now when we do experience that, some of the places that we do go, we're not going to be shocked by it. And early on, it's hard to say. I mean, there's been so few games played to really get a gauge of who's who and what's what.
You got any more questions, guys?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask something, Coach. What's it like managing the morale as you lose all these games? Not lose, but
Yeah,
delay.
no. To be honest with you, I mean, it's been the last 2 weeks have been probably the hardest 2 weeks I've had since I've been on the job. And I've been on the job since day one of COVID, and I had to go through the, last year and all what that entailed. But I would say the last 2 weeks have been probably the hardest, not just for myself, the coaching staff, the players. It's almost like when at the end of the season, as coaches, we kind of have our decompression depression. You grind through the season and then it comes to a complete halt. And then you're like, now what do we do now? And that's kind of what the last, couple of weeks, last 10 days, last 2 weeks has really felt like, because you just don't know. And then every day you're just getting hit with the body blow. And, eventually that, some guys are showing negative, but, they have symptoms, and eventually whether that's going to be on day 3, day 4, day 5, that they're going to pop positive. And then from there, I mean, who knows, who could figure out what, the 5 days. And then now, okay, well, yeah, they're 5 days and now they can test negative, but some can test positive. And so just trying to manage it's been tough. I mean, it's been tough for all of us. And so I said, hopefully we're past it, even though we're still got some, few more days to go, but, hopefully we can just continue now where we can play. Cause it's hard for guys. I mean, even, talking to some of these guys that have been in isolation for 5 days. I mean, it's just for the symptoms that they do have, which is very, very mild. I mean, the mental toll that it takes on these guys. I mean, that's the thing I worry the most about. And so we're always checking in with making sure that we, whatever we can legally do and make sure whatever we can to make sure that, they have everything they need. Cause it's a tough existence. And like I said, I don't worry about these guys the COVID in terms of maybe some of the impacts physically you'll have, but I really worry about the mental toll that it takes. And when you're just putting healthy guys in isolation for 5 days, and then I have one guy right now who's tested for, he's after his 5th day, he's tested positive for 4 straight days now. And then lo and behold, the new guidelines, I think after the 10th day, if he tests positive tomorrow, on the 11th day, he's magically not contagious anymore. And he's cleared to play. And so navigating that nonsense and just trying to make sure that you do keep the morale up. I mean, that's our biggest thing. And then from there, we could sit here and worry about all the other teams, but we got to focus on us and making sure that we get back to where we're at. And that's the biggest thing.